day.
Happiness.
I know. We're like talking about like really heavy things for 10 minutes, and all of a sudden the music comes on. We're both like, yes,
we're like, this is our space. We are here live. We're a couple minutes late, but hey, it's our own show. We get to do what we want.
Yeah. I'm glad that we're not rigid, and I like that we can cover a lot of ground very quickly, as we've just done. And here we are, and we're upright.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, if the show was called Rigid with Allie and Jen? Oh.
Ew. Actually, who would have a show called Rigid? Actually, there's probably some industry environment that would be applicable. Yeah. And there's definitely good qualities to being rigid. Just with us, we're not capable of that. I think the ADHD is a little too much for this.
Yeah, I think just about a half an hour ago before getting on here, I was doing something. I was having a conversation with my husband, and I took a very hard turn into some other, and he was like scrolling, and I was like, yes, yeah, I just can't help it. It just happens. My brain is like, and like the association, like I see something, it makes me have this other train of thought, and then I'm like off the rails, like over there.
I think that's why just like staying around like other neurospicy people makes it like almost makes your life easier, because like they're also just kind of like following the train that's going off the rails and no one thinks anything of it. Versus like when you have a conversation with someone who is rigid and linear, like my ex-wife, for example, like very linear thinker, like very, and like I'm like weaving in and out and like talking about 45 different things. And she's like, but what about, and she'll remember the thing from 10 minutes ago. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that's how we started. Like, whoops. How we got here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's good times.
Good times. Good times with those linear folks.
We need them.
God bless them, because like there's a lot of times where my vision and my ideas are bigger than logic. And I need my husband to kind of ground me in like, wait a minute, let's go back to the beginning and start over and think this all the way through, because I think you missed some things. I
don't have that in my relationship. We are both the same level of hyping each other up with no.
Yeah. I love being a dreamer, so I don't want it to come across like he's like, poo-pooing my party, but I think there would be a lot more times that I would float up into the great abyss if he wasn't like holding on to the string.
Like, hey, let's be a little realistic here.
You can float up there for a little bit, but I'm about to yank you back down because we're missing some serious reality. Like, come on back. But actually, that kind of segues into what we're talking.
I was going to say that was not our intention at all, because we are always fully unscripted, but that like actually like fully leads into accountability today. Like how appropriate.
How appropriate indeed. But before we dive into today's topic, let's just remind y'all that we are here Unscripted with Allie and Jen. You know which one of us is which because the names are on the screen. But we are here to really focus this season of the show on how to promote with intention and purpose. And we're following Jen's new fabulous book, Promote Your Purpose. A strategic guide to book marketing for nonfiction authors who want to grow their impact, influence, and income. And if you go over to unscriptedforauthors.com, you can get all of the dates for this season, as well as a free workbook that accompanies the show, accompanies the book, although you don't need the book to have the workbook or to join us live or catch the replays and get a lot of wealth of material from this show. And the added bonus for those of you who have not yet dialed in is when you show up live with Jen and I, you have the chance for live coaching. So by engaging with us in the comments, asking your questions, or just commenting, sharing your ahas, we get to be a little community here and make sure that you're getting everything that you need for promoting your book. Jen, you want to add anything to that?
No, I'm always excited about this because we did design this with intentionality to not have to have someone, purchase something or do something extra. And I love that we do have the interactive piece to it. I would love to have more people live every month. But anytime we do have someone live, I think it works out well, because I think you and I both do a good job at kind of feeding off of the comments and the energy that is coming in from us. So hopefully anyone who is here live, please, take a moment to introduce yourself, share what you're working on, share about your book. And then if you have questions, as we were saying top of this, our neuro spicy brains allow for us to weave in and out, which means that we can answer questions easily and bring us right back to where we wanted to be. So.
That is absolutely true. So if you are here already, we would love to know that you're joining us live. So pop into the comments, let us know that you're here. Maybe even let us know what you're working on. That would be great, because then we can really tailor the conversation to some of what's happening for all of you. All right. So let's see, just to recap where we have been this year so far. So in January, we talked about finding your purpose behind how you want to promote and market your book. In February, we talked about setting goals that actually drive growth. Last month, we talked about mindset. So that making sure that you had the right mindset for going after those goals. And so this month, well, you got to stay motivated. You got to be accountable to the goals that you've set. So if any of those topics are of interest, go back, check out the first 3 episodes of this year. You won't be sorry. But there shouldn't be anything that's stopping you from gaining what you need from this month's episode.
No, not at all. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because I feel like even the title of this, like, motivation is overrated, because accountability is what builds books. Because it's true, like, we need to be motivated, obviously, because writing a book, publishing a book, marketing a book, none of that is an easy task. Like, you have to have some kind of internal sense of motivation. And as we talked about in January, we were talking about purpose and impact and, like, why you're doing it and all those things. Those are nice anchor points to remind us, oh yeah, I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this on behalf of the people that I'm serving. So that is that drives a lot of that motivation. But it's really having the right support systems in place, the right accountability in place, that helps us actually get the thing done, in my experience, which I think is the case for pretty much any big goal that you're trying to set. You have to have some kind of accountability. And so today we'll break down what that accountability looks like, because, it can take a lot of different shapes and forms. So we can kind of dive in. And so as part of this kind of 12-month series that we're doing following the book, we're using your 2 books, Allie, as the kind of you as the case study, if you will, for how you are implementing these things in your own author career, if you will. So you're both expert and subject. Ooh, so
expert and author. And I think, we've done this purposely, folks, right? To show that this is an ongoing experience. It's an ongoing action to choose into. Right. My first book came out in 2020. It's now 2026. I'm still trying things on. I'm still trying to figure out, how do I weave in my books into my business, because silly me, have been compartmentalizing those things for years and not thinking strategically about how to actually leverage the book for the purposes of where I am now in business. And my next book came out in 2024. And I'm still figuring out how that one compares to the first one. And again, how to leverage that differently. That one's not memoir. That's more prescriptive. And so different books, different things to leverage, but all part of the same ecosystem. And I think ecosystem, is that where we're going next?
Sure is. Yep. Next month. Yep.
Oh my gosh. You all might think that we're really doing this on purpose, all these great connections and segues and things, but no, unscripted, 100%. Okay, so today, motivation, accountability. So I want to just touch on something, Jenn, that you said, that like accountability builds books. And I could not agree with that more. A lot of people who come to me, so as a book coach and developmental editor, people tend to stall out, get stuck, or they have a hard time even getting started, right? And there's a lot of this kind of like self-criticism, I really want to do it, but why am I not doing it? And, and to me, motivation and accountability are not the same thing. So you can be motivated towards something, I think, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that because you want it and you're capable of it and you pick at it here and there, that you're necessarily holding your feet to the fire and like actually getting the thing done. And so when people come and they think that it's them being lazy, lacking momentum, not wanting it badly enough, not having enough willpower, I often think that it's probably more to do with structure, clarity, and accountability.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And we've already kind of talked about the clarity in previous shows. So I feel like at this point, if you've been following along for the last couple of months, I feel like you probably have a good sense of the clarity. And now it's like, okay, now I want to actually start to take the action to do the thing.
Yeah.
What do I need to have in place in order to accomplish this? And so basically the way that this chapter is broken down is kind of like into two pieces. It's kind of like the who do you need on your team to make this all happen? And then it's kind of like the backup plans for when you have something that you would like to happen and it doesn't happen as you wanted it to. So that's kind of like the two big points. So I'm curious, Allie, before kind of diving into like the who on like before doing like a high level of the who on the team. For you, did you feel like you had someone or something missing from keeping yourself accountable, especially as, we're both like experts in this field doing all of the work to keep other people accountable? I think sometimes the hardest person to keep accountable is ourselves.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, during both books, I had people as a part of the accountability structures. And honestly, I know that that's exactly why those books got done because outside of both of those books, I have struggled a lot to stick to my own writing and my own creative process. Because if it's not like a specific goal or doesn't come with a specific deadline, right? And then I also don't have the people that are like whispering in my ear, like I can choose out of my own writing over and over and over again, right? Especially as life gets busy, business gets busy. And 100%, if I am full capacity with clients and I'm working on coaching them through their manuscripts or I'm assessing a manuscript that's already been drafted, I get really tapped out creatively because I'm spending so much energy looking at other people's work that having anything left over for myself has been difficult, right? And so definitely like how I wrote the book, Dear Universe, in 2020 was a very different approach than how I wrote the book, Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. And that's actually an interesting one to talk about because it was a co-authorship. So we can circle back around to that. But outside of those two books, like as I've tried to approach, like I want to go back to this essay, I want to go back to this children's book manuscript. Like these are want to haves, but they haven't been necessary in certain ways. And so each season it's been, okay, what works now?
And I think that's important is to have like this, like to actually factor in the seasonality of what you're capable of. Because I think for some people, like I think this is a really good example, like for people who are in creative fields or working with people in creative ways, it's hard to tap into your own creativity versus if you have a job maybe that you're just feeling unfulfilled in and your creative outlet is your writing. I feel like that kind of internal motivation and accountability might be a lot stronger because you're using it as a form of escape versus you're like, oh, now I'm like, I have competing priorities because I have to do this for a client and I also want to do it for myself.
Yeah. So I think that is 100% true. When I started my business, I was like, yay, I get to write for a living. My passion gets to earn the bucks, right? And now it's like everything feels like work. Right. Yeah. And so trying to like remotivate and then find that accountability for the thing that I still know that I love, it's a different shift. Right. But I can say y'all that I got some of my mojo back here more recently. And I submitted 2 different personal essays to 2 different magazines with April 1st deadlines. And I applied for a grant in the state of Vermont, had an April 5th deadline, and that's to work on a novel.
Ooh.
So I'm leaving my nonfiction genre. I'm going back to my original love, which is what I was always like stream of consciousness writing as a kid, was fiction. And that actually has been a part of my new accountability in this season. I am now a little bit more interested in playing around with other types of forms and genres because it feels different than what I'm always doing in my business. Yeah. And so I feel like I found a way to cheat the system.
I love that. And how like empowering does that feel to be able to just say like, hey, I'm exploring new things, right? Like we don't have to be stuck in the silo that someone might be viewing us in, or we put ourselves in.
Yeah, exactly. But we also know that we're talking to all of you who more than likely are not in the creative fields. You are potentially entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners, coaches, consultants, and you're writing the nonfiction book, right? The book is meant to be a funnel for your business. It's meant to help with your ecosystem for your business. It's not necessarily like you're a me who has been dreaming since you were a child of authoring books and trying to figure out how to make it big. So like, let's bring back that lens for talking through kind of these accountability building blocks. So Jenn, do you want to talk about like the 3 types of people on your team for accountability?
Yeah, I'll give the high level. And this is also why like you don't need the book. It also kind of has a little bit of a summary in the workbook itself. Is I started off saying this as a joke. Like this was truly just a joke until I started to unpack this. And this was probably almost 10 years ago. Is that when I am working with an author, I have 3 hats on, not all at the same time, but I have 3. I'm usually wearing 2 of the 3 at any time. And it is the strategist, right? So from an accountability standpoint, you really want to have someone who can operate as a strategist. And that could mean a lot of different things. All 3 of these things could kind of mean a lot of different things. And the people that fill out those roles could be different things. So in a strategist, having someone who is a book coach, that's a great person to be a strategist. However, it could just be somebody in your life who's already done the thing that you want to do. It doesn't mean that they have to be an expert in the thing. I think, generally speaking, the more expert lens you can kind of put in these roles, I think the better, but it's not required, because if budget is a constraint for you and you don't have the ability to go out and hire somebody right now, it's okay, because you can fill somebody else in this spot. So the strategist is the person who's there to kind of brainstorm with you, to help you get through the roadblock, move in the next direction, like just really kind of help you kind of keep moving forward. And that's different than the other 2 roles, which is the therapist, which is what it sounds like. It's somebody who is there to kind of help you like really move through the muck that inevitably comes up when writing a book. And we, our 2 things that we cross are nonfiction and memoir, right? Like this is not exclusively memoir writers, because when you're writing a memoir, Lord knows every demon kind of surfaces that tells you that you shouldn't be doing this. You're not good enough. No one cares about your story. All of those really horrible things that we say to ourselves. The therapist could be an actual professional. And I think in some cases, an actual professional will be pivotal in getting you through this process. And if you don't have the resources for that, a best friend, a sister, a sibling, a husband, a spouse, somebody who might be kind of orbiting your world. Third person is a cheerleader. And that is the simple one, which is just someone who is go you, rah, rah, rah. It does not matter how bad you just screwed this thing up. They're there to be like, yes, girl, you keep going. You've got this. Nothing matters. So it's this kind of combination of these 3 players that I find to be kind of like this dream team. And you might have one person that kind of fills all of these roles a little bit. You might have one person who is the worst cheerleader on earth, but they're a great listener. Or you might have someone who really understands the strategy and they're a terrible listener. So, it's really a matter of kind of identifying for you who fits in these roles. And so in the workbook, there's spots for 5 in each of these categories. So it's strategist, therapist, cheerleader, and there's places to put 5 names. You might have only 1 name that you can fill in this entire grid. And that is 100% okay, because what we're doing is raising awareness to what will be helpful and beneficial. I do not expect anybody to have 5 names for each of these categories, because I don't think that's realistic, but it's something that we can strive towards. So that way, when we're feeling like, oh, I've been bothering this person too much because I really need that cheerleader to lean into, we have a second or a third or fourth person that we can reach out to instead.
Absolutely.
Good explanation.
Love it.
Okay.
Love it. And I'm so glad that you opened with these are the three roles that I often play with an author, but maybe not all at the same time. 100% relate to that. Like when I was looking through the book and I was doing the workbook exercises for today, I was thinking about it for myself as an author, but I had not really thought about it from that perspective as a coach and editor. Okay. And 100%, like wearing all those hats through the manuscript development, you know, for all the reasons that you named. So do we want to talk a little bit more specifically about each of these, like through my lens?
Yeah, I think I'm curious from your lens based on your two different books, because one is a memoir and one is nonfiction. And I'm curious if the people line up for the same, you know, like each book has the same people in the same places.
Yeah. So with Dear Universe, I get it now. I felt like strategists came in like certain pieces of the manuscript development. I had a writing coach who initially helped me with the mapping of my overall story and memoir, but then I was like, okay, this is not that full like story. This is a little bit more, it ended up being epistolary and more thematic, but still having her had me map my whole kind of life. It allowed me to see the way that manuscript would kind of track along an arc. So she wasn't necessarily with me through the entire drafting stage, but she was with me kind of like before this book even started to kind of get drafted. And then she was also the person who ended up doing the manuscript assessment once I had a certain draft completed. And so she came back in with her kind of her editorial eye, which more or less is kind of strategy for your manuscript, right? And said, this is what's working and this is what's not working. So she was kind of there in two different places. And then there was somebody separate who helped me undo some blocks that I had as to why I was avoiding like getting this project done. And so I would say she probably blended strategy and therapy. Even though she doesn't classify herself as a therapist, but she knew enough to kind of help me analyze the block and then move the block out of the way in order to actually get the thing done. And then I had a couple of people. My husband was for sure a cheerleader during that first book in big, big ways. He was the one who was constantly like, stop calling it a marketing stunt. Not what this is. But that was language that I was using because it made the task and it made my imposter syndrome feel more controllable and containable when I would say like, oh, it's just a marketing stunt. Like I'm doing it so I can prove like that I can write other people. And he was like, oh my God, you've wanted to write a book since you were 5. Like this is way more than just like a marketing stunt. So he was really impactful there. But then I had 2 close friends at the time who, one would listen to chapters of the book in Voxer. So after I got done drafting a chapter, I would read it out loud. And that was super helpful because not only did I hear things that were awkward, clunky, not fully developed, like whatever, but she could then also give me back feedback on like how it emotionally resonated with her or what she wanted to hear more of, which was just like good real-time feedback to kind of like keep me going and keep my momentum kind of sharp. And I had another friend who's known me since high school, has seen me kind of like on this windy path to like do this thing. And towards the very end, I was getting like the imposter syndrome, the doubt, the like, what if people hate it? Like there was so much inner critic happening as I got closer to publication that I remember he sent me a message once that was like, you've been meaning to do this like your entire life. So shush those bitches. That was the exact phrase. Shush those bitches. And I've never forgotten that. Because even as I go into new writing and the inner voice, you know, critic starts to like I remember him saying to me in that one message, shush those bitches. And it takes a little bit of the fear or discomfort kind of like out of the equation.
And adds like a levity to it because you're like, okay, it's really not that serious either.
Right. Yeah. So that was kind of my team for Dear Universe, which was pretty different than Do Not Write a Book, which came a couple years later.
And I am not surprised when I'll be curious to hear what you say, because everything that you just said, it sounds like the perfect configuration of people for a memoir people who know you, people that you trust, people who are there to kind of fill those roles. And especially, the person who is kind of like not like wouldn't call herself a therapist, more of a strategist, but like that's where like we all kind of like lean in different directions at different times.
Yeah.
And someone who's like a really good strategist, I think can lean into that cheerleader and therapist side when necessary, because they know what you need. And like a good coach knows what the person they're coaching needs in that moment.
Exactly.
Love that.
So with Do Not Write a Book, so that was a co-author partnership. All right. So this is an interesting story because
buckle up. Let's go.
Buckle up. All right. So my co-author, Bridget McGowan Hawkins, who's the CEO and founder of a hybrid press, Press 49. She's fantastic. Bridget and I connected on LinkedIn one time, then jumped on a phone call one time. Then she came on a different live show that I was doing at the time called Open Book Broadcast. Okay. So that's touch point number 3. All right. After the show closes, we were still like vibing and we were like, what we really wish that authors would just know, like these 3 things. Right. And so all of a sudden we saw this like triangle kind of form of like 3 things that we would really want authors to like know before they got started. And then of course, because we're both in the book space, we both had the light bulb moment. Now we remember this differently. I remembered having the idea, but she remembers having the idea. That wouldn't this make a great book? Yeah. Okay. So touch point number 4, we're jumping on a call and we're outlining a book together.
It's freaking amazing. And that's based on both of your personalities. This is not a surprise at all.
Okay. But I think about this all the time. Like, okay, both of us, we learned this as we were working together. Neither one of us liked group projects as children because we were always the person who was doing a majority of the work while other people were getting credit and slacking off. Right. So with that in mind, co-authorship would not necessarily
be a great plan
that either of us would have like actually gone for. And now that I know what goes into co-authoring a book, I realize now how incredibly crucial it is that you have a really solid foundation with your co-author, or that thing can go off the rails like immediately. So the fact that Bridget and I had really only had like 3 touch points before we launched ourselves into this partnership, but like lightning struck, because it was almost one of the most seamless projects I have ever had. And that is saying a lot given how much goes into a book. And there's already a lot when it's just you, right? But when it's you and somebody else and you're trying to figure out, how do you divide the manuscript? How do you make your voice cohesive when there are 2 of you? How do you review each other's work to make sure that you would stand behind what they say, since your name's also going on the cover of this book? Which one of you approves like the edits from the other, the outside editor when it finally goes to line editing? How do you agree on a cover design, right? Like, and so interestingly, the only thing that we ever found ourselves kind of out of step with one another was feature designs.
Oh, interesting. That is an interesting, like, of all the things.
Of all the things. The only thing that we kept kind of like missing the mark was we got number of designs for the interior of the book, like what we wanted our call out boxes to look like, and we were always off by like 1 number. Like there were 8 choices and I'd be a 2 and she'd be a 4. Like, and we cracked us up because everything else had been just like, zit, 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 zit. Like, all right, we're doing this. So when it came to that project, I think there were times where we were playing strategist or therapist or cheerleader for each other, depending on what was going on. I mean, the manuscript took a lot longer than we anticipated. A lot of life happened during the drafting. We had a lot of decisions to make just by the nature of there being 2 of us. We were both trying to run businesses. We both have sons nearly the same age. So there was the whole momming thing. And I think a lot of the roles of these 3 people were baked into one another. And it was just a matter of like, which one was kind of like elevated based on what was happening at the time. And because we had each other, like certainly each of our husbands was kind of like, encouraging us along. but I don't know that we needed as many outside inputs because we had two experts and professionals working on one project and we were both bringing our strengths.
Yeah. I love that because I have worked with many a co-author pair in publishing, and not all cross the finish line, and not all still are friends at the end of it. Like, it is not uncommon to have a massive rupture in a relationship as the result of a co-author situation. So the fact that you did not know each other super well, but you were like, we're doing this. Like, again, based on how both of you roll, I'm not surprised. And also, I think that is the magic, because you both know what it takes to get it done, and you can both respect and honor the kind of like where the other person is at. So it's not surprising that you were playing all three for her, she was playing all three for you. Like, I think that makes absolute perfect sense. And also, like, what a gift to have like two book experts coming from different lenses to be able to come together and create something that is so incredible, because your book is freaking amazing. Like, I think it looks amazing. The call out boxes, whoever won, whichever, in there. I think the layout looks fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's just really funny that it was just like the little details. And you know what's crazy is that some authors don't even pay attention to those little details. So I love that it's like two experts, like, like the celebrity death match over a call out box. Like, how fun is that?
Oh my gosh, we laughed so hard. And then there was my other favorite moment was we got the draft back from the line editor. And Bridget and I have a lot of energy, and getting the voice right in the book didn't take much because we kind of have a similar, like, let's do this, like, kind of thing. Yeah. And we wanted the manuscript to come across very much like we were speaking to an author. Very real, very straightforward, a little irreverent at times, a little snappy at others. Not snappy as in like terse, but like, witty, quick. And so there were a couple of times in the book, I think, where we used "Am I right?" and we smushed like all of the all of those words together, so that it appeared and was read like you would say, "Am I right?" As if it's one thing. And the line editors didn't get it.
They were like, no.
Like, wanted to fix it. And we were like, no, this is on purpose. Or like there was some other, maybe a sports reference, which is funny because I'm not really a sports reference type of person, but went above her head too. And for whatever reason, that just cracked us right up.
Really
like, and we were like, we're going to reject that.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. We're going to say no to that. But I do think, co-authorships, everything's got to kind of like, it's got to hit. Otherwise, it's like going into business with your best friend. That does not always work out well, as fun as it might sound like it would.
You have to have clear boundaries, and you have to know, like, you have to have like a real awareness of what your strengths are. And this is regardless of co-author or just doing this by yourself. Like, you have to know where your strengths begin and end, and be open to seeking help and assistance where they do end, right? Instead of just kind of like barreling through it, being like, I am the expert, I know everything. And it's like, this is why you need to bring in editors, for example. This is why you need to bring in people who know how to design things. Like, we really need to pull in the right people to make that product elevated in the way that you want it to be elevated. Because, just because you can write doesn't mean you know how to edit. It's just
100% true. Like, Bridget and I were commands over our content, but that didn't mean that we were naive to think that there shouldn't be somebody else's eyes on it. Like, even though I was looking at her stuff and she was looking at mine, right? And so we were kind of each other's initial developmental reviewer, right? Like, we weren't necessarily looking at the whole thing as a whole going, okay, this looks right. Plus, once you work on something yourself so many times, right? You definitely want the outside perspective and opinion anyway, right? Like, doctors need doctors, therapists need therapists. Like, even experts in the publishing field need to call upon others outside of the project to come in and take a look at it. And in some ways, that's also accountability structure, right? But rather than it being accountability to get it done, it's accountability to make sure it's the best product that it can be, right? It's a quality control kind of accountability in that instance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because like, you don't want to, you and I are, I feel like always saying this, like, you don't want to put all this time and effort into a book and then like half-ass something at the end and then have nobody read it or people be disappointed in it and be like, oh, wow, that's really not a good reflection of her. Like I expected more from her and her work. Like nobody ever wants to hear that. And it's all avoidable.
Yeah. And this makes me think of another piece. So I talked to somebody recently from a community that we were both a part of a number of years ago, but she remembered that I was in the book space. And so she signed up for a connection call. She wanted to kind of pick my brain because her spouse is, finally getting a chance to publish a novel that he worked on a long time ago, but he was trying to find a place for, and, wanted to know what was typical, what do authors typically do. But in the midst of that conversation, kind of learned that the publisher wasn't going to do very much by way of marketing, which we both know is not uncommon in kind of smaller presses or more traditionally run presses or whatever it is. And certainly among our Indian hybrid presses, like what is provided for marketing usually is minimal, right? Because they're there to publish, right? Not necessarily promote.
Yeah.
But this is where you as the author have to remain accountable to what you want your book to do, right? You need to remain accountable to the mission and vision and goals that you've set, right? So if we go back to episode 1 of this season, what do you want your book to do out in the world, right? And so while today we've talked about accountability and getting a manuscript done, the accountability does not shift when it comes to promoting the book, right? You're still going to set yourself up with like, here's why I want to promote it. This is what I want it to do for me, right? Now, how do I remain accountable to those actions or plans or goals, right? And the people that you place on your team are still going to be important, right? In ensuring that you don't just write the book and then let it sit, right? And if anybody ever says to you like, well, I finished it and I put it up and now like the readers will come, they're full of crap and you shouldn't listen to them. Like that's not how it works. Nobody's going to buy anything that they don't know about, right? Which we've said 1,000 times, I think, this season alone. So you need to stay accountable here, definitely, because your book is not going to sell itself.
It is not. And I wish that, if you build it, they will come worked, but it's not how it is, especially given the amount of books that are published like on a daily basis. And that number was already high, but now with AI kind of, making it even easier for people to put together sloppy things and throw it in there, it's making it even more saturated. So like we have to be intentional. And thankfully, like next month we'll talk about ecosystems and then we'll talk about kind of like targeting, how do we get in front of the right people, how to sell. And then we'll really, as we kind of get through the rest of this year, we'll be going into much more of the tactile side of like, what does promoting a book actually look like? Because just like hitting the publish button on Amazon and expecting to have, 100 sales on that day, like it's just completely unrealistic. And I think that there's like just like a fantasy that, and I don't know, I've always tried to figure out like, where did that myth come from? That like, just because you put a book on Amazon, like people are going to be like flocking to it, like because so many people believe that, like really believe that that's how it works. And it's the ones who are hustling are the ones that are successful. Well, let's move into the structured plans now, right? So we talked about like the people, right? And so like you gave some really good examples of like what this could look like. And as I said at the start, like you're not going to fill out all 5 spaces for each of these people. So it's perfect based on your examples. The next piece of it is thinking about like, what do I know to be true in my life that is inevitably going to throw me off course? And how can I plan for that ahead of time? That's kind of like what the next section is, which is using like old, I'm just probably not old, like computer programming, like if this, then that. So like, I always like to, like right now I have a very active 17-year-old who likes to just be in my space and up my ass at all times. And so, if I'm actively trying to work on a book, which I do, I have 3 different books that I'm like percolating on and just kind of like putting things in documents right now. Like I know for a fact that if I tried to write when I have time with him, even though he's 17, he's independent, he like does his own thing. Like me trying to write while he's home, no. Like and he's not with me half the time. Why would I even try it? Why would I torture myself like that? But if I were like, okay, if I know that my child's going to be up my ass and bothering me trying to do this, then I'm going to write when he's not home. Like it's as simple as that. Instead of sitting down and being like, let me find my favorite beverage. Let me put a nice light on. Let me light a candle. Let me have this moment and sit and write. And then he comes and interrupts me. I'm going to go into a rage. I'm going to be like pissed, but it's like, it's completely avoidable. So thinking about what could that look like? The other side of it, I think, is getting triggered, because writing memoir is absolutely triggering in many different ways.
Yeah.
Writing nonfiction can also be triggering. And I think for you and I, we've always worked with people that it's like narrative nonfiction. So it's not just a straight how to do this type of book. It is very much woven in with the author's story. And even that little bit of author story that people are bringing in can be triggering. It can bring up those self-doubts, the inner critic, all the things that we've been talking about. So it's having a simple statement that's like, if I'm triggered by something that I'm writing, then I am going to, it could be walk away from the computer. It could be go for a walk outside. It could be phone a friend. It could be any number of these things. So this is not, none of this is designed to be complicated. It's more about just having a place to know, like, okay, I know for a fact this is going to interrupt me. I know for a fact that my cat's a pain in the ass and going to walk across my keyboard. I know, like, and you can just say like, all right, then if I know that's the case, then I'm going to go sit outside and write. So really basic things, or they could be a little bit bigger. So with that backdrop, what are your things that you feel inevitable are going to get in your way?
So I think I approach this thinking specifically about marketing. Mm-hmm. And then I also filtered this through the lens of some of the goals that I set for the year.
Love this. Yep.
So like one of my goals was to be doing more speaking, whether that was podcasts or in libraries or just whatever, right? And so then I set up like, okay, I'm gonna reach out to 2 places a month to inquire about speaking, right? So now I've got, if I don't hear back within 2 weeks from the places or people that I've reached out to about speaking that I'm really interested in, then I'll send 1 follow-up note. Now, I've done this very intentionally. I added that I'm really interested in, because some of these things, right, like so that it's not time consuming and it's not tedious, I'm kind of like just tossing things out to see what lands. I don't want to waste a lot of time in follow-up if like that particular one is not like completely like, oh, no, I really want that one, right? Because I figure I still planted the seed. If they want to get back to me 6 months from now, fine. So this is really me trying to strategically manage like my time and how much energy I'm like putting out there, because I got a lot of other things going on, right? And I'm only going to send 1 follow-up note because, quite frankly, I hate following up. 2, I feel like if I have to follow up a bunch of times, then like that feels like it's desperate energy,
like pushing the boulder up the hill,
rather than invitation energy. And again, like if they're still active, or they still need speakers that year, or their podcast is still going, like they'll come back to me if they're really interested. And if not, it wasn't meant to be. Like I'm not holding on. I have, if I find it difficult, actually, let me back up. So this next one refers to a goal that I had to develop content every month, at least once, that connects Do Not Write a Book to authority kind of like thought leadership.
Yep.
Right. So I said, if I find it difficult to come up with the ideas to use Do Not Write a Book as authority content for the month on social media, then I'll reach out to my strategist for ideas.
Yes.
I left strategist kind of like unspecific, because it could be that I reach out to Bridget as my co-author and get her thoughts, because she's the only other one that knows the book as intimately as I do. But it could mean that I reach out to you because you have a marketing mindset, right? And you might see things that I don't.
Yep.
Right? But quite frankly, I'm also doing a lot with AI right now. So I might toss some ideas into AI to jumpstart my engine, right? So that I'm not sitting there spending too much time spinning my wheels and wasting precious time that I already don't have.
Yes. Yeah. This is perfect, because you tied the strategist role into this plan, right? Because so much of this is about visibility and showing up and following through and all of the things. So like before, when I was like, like if you're, like just sitting there trying to like get it done, they're like, we get frozen in fear over just being visible and being seen by other people. So I love that you already have kind of like, if this doesn't happen, then I can reach out to a strategist to help me. And it also applies like if I'm trying to find some alone time to just even brainstorm with AI on what this could look like, and I hit this like block, then I can reach out to my therapist to figure out how do they help me move through the block. So I love that you kind of organically and mapped it back to your goals, which shows how the book all does interconnect together.
Yeah. I mean, people don't create if then statements that are disconnected to like your end game, right? Because then you won't find use for them. Now, what I can say, though, going back to something that you said earlier about people writing memoir, right? The if then is great as a preventative measure. So like I did if then based on where we're focused for the season, in promotion. And I thought about my goals and things like that. But like if you're not in promoting yet and you're in development, right? Your if then statements are basically what I would call like your emotional toolkit. Before you get going. And so one of the things that I do with authors, especially in memoir, as we're kicking off, is I try to get a sense like if there is going to be certain things that we know are going to hit those trigger points or pressure points, figuring out what tools they already have. They already have a therapist, right, that they're seeing. Great. We already have like a tool in place, right? If they're familiar with breathing exercises, then I'm going to remind them that like that's a skill or a tool that they can go to when they need it, right? But if they don't have a therapist in place, they don't have breathing exercises, then what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a couple of potential strategies for them to use if and when, or if and then. Those things happen, which inevitably they do somewhere along the way. But rather than get to a crisis point and then not have talked about what are some ways to do that, right? We try to think about those ahead of time so that we're not losing momentum and we're not getting caught up in the swirl. But what is also true is when you get caught up in the swirl, you often forget what your tools and skills are or what the strategies were that you outlined to begin with, right? And that's why then having a coach to remind you of what was discussed or give you new things to try, right, ends up being really important to your own like mental health and well-being, but also getting the book written.
Yeah. And I think what you said about the crisis point is so on point, right? Because like you don't want to get to that crisis point. You don't want it to get to that place where you are kind of like losing all sense of what you were doing and not having some kind of strategy in place, because that's when, you and I talk to authors where I might have a conversation today with somebody in April and they say, my goal is to have it to you by September. Great. Like I have these conversations all the time. And then, I follow up routinely and something hit that crisis point and they didn't know how to come back from it. So they just dropped it all together. And like, that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's both on the writing side and the promotional side, because it's the same idea. Because I think if we put writing and visibility in parallel together, it's the same. I feel like it triggers the same depth of emotions, where writing brings up all kinds of emotions, but being visible with our writing brings up a whole other host of emotions. So if we're not ready for that crisis point of what happens, not when just someone says no to whatever the thing is that we're going for from our goal, but also like, what if they say yes? That like really can trigger our nervous system into whatever default state or fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And then it's like, oh, wow, we like got to the thing we wanted. And now our body actually wasn't prepared for it. So that's like a whole other kind of like, other lens to kind of look at this all through. And again, it doesn't matter if it's memoir or nonfiction or fiction. It's applicable for anything when we're putting ourselves out there for other people to critique our work.
Yeah. Because we think that it's not just critiquing our work, it's critiquing us.
Correct.
Right?
We have a hard time separating. Oh my God, we had like the same phrase. Look at that.
You just can't make it up, folks.
That's good.
All right. What else? Is there anything else that we want to cover here before we start to wrap on?
I would just say finally, this is, just like a little footnote here is in the workbook, there's kind of a under my accountability, like identifying like the one person out of like everything we've talked about and just figuring out, like write their name down, kind of figure out what that check-in frequency might look like. Or is it like a weekly thing, a bi-weekly, a monthly, as needed, day of the week, just to like, if you need that extra level of accountability. Not everyone does. Not everybody wants it, but it's just kind of there as a little deeper dive if someone would find that helpful for them.
Yeah. I also want to highlight, because I think that this is really important, and I know that we've touched upon this in the last few episodes, but there's a nice little call out here in the book itself. Your strategy isn't about showing up constantly. It's about showing up intentionally, right? So I think this is where accountability and motivation start to get all squirrely, is when we get overwhelmed by thinking that we need to be in all 10 places doing all 10 things.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than thinking intentionally and strategically about where to show up and how to show up and when to show up, which is realistic to us, intentional and meaningful with our goals. Right. Because, you know, more is not necessarily better. Right. It's the right actions at the right intervals for the right reasons that's going to be better, right? Yeah. And when you're trying to hold yourself accountable to one or two things rather than 12 things, right? Like, you're not overwhelming your system or your schedule or your time or whatever it is, trying to be in all the places, right? Because you think that, like, casting that wider net somehow is going to bring in more fish, right? Yeah. Well, if you're casting the wider net in a place that is barren, then it doesn't matter how wide your net is. The fish ain't over there, right? So go put your net where the fish are.
Yeah. Yep. And make it a little one. Just a little net.
Maybe you make it a little net, but maybe there's a high concentration of fish there because you found the right spot, right, on the map to be in your boat. I don't know why I came up with a fishing analogy. Maybe because my husband and son are going fishing on Saturday.
It works, though. I feel like it's applicable. Yeah.
So yes, folks, you don't need to be everywhere constantly. You need to be in some strategic places intentionally. And those things should be aligned with your purpose, your intention, your goals, all the things that we've been talking about this first quarter.
And I will say, my friend Nell, her Substack handle is Nell3D, because she has 3 last names that all begin with D. And her Substack is called Subtract to Succeed. And it is fantastic for exactly what we're talking about, where she kind of like unpacks, like, how do we actually remove things from our daily life, professional life, all of the things to actually get further ahead. So I highly, highly recommend it. Subtract to Succeed on Substack. Next month, we're talking about ecosystems. So we're going to dive into chapter 5, which is turn your book into an ecosystem. And that is now going to be looking at the book, your thought leadership, your business, if you have one, your speaking, and how do we really have all of these things come together so they do function as an ecosystem. And I will be curious to see what you come up with. Yes, thank you for the visual. I will be curious on your side how, when you're looking at your ecosystem, if you have memoir ecosystem, nonfiction ecosystem, or is it one big merged ecosystem where both of those books actually play together in harmony? I will be curious to see how this all lands, and we can unpack that all in May.
That is going to be an exciting episode. And
this is where it really gets exciting, in my opinion. We've been talking all the foundation. Now we're like moving into the good stuff.
The good stuff. All right. So that's going to be Thursday, May 14th.
Sure is.
Just to let everybody know which day to tune in. As always, like, if you haven't yet gone over to unscriptedforauthors.com, please do so. If you're not catching this live, but you're catching the replay, please drop your comments so that we can get back to you. We're happy to provide support. That is the whole point of Unscripted with Ali and Jen. There is no reason why authors should not be doing these things well after all of the time and energy and investment that goes into writing a good book. We want to make sure that you succeed on the other side of that, because marketing is actually the beginning. It's not the end. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. So in the last few minutes here, Jen, what do you want to promote this month?
So we have we have launched the Institute for Author Growth and Impact. So it's authorgrowthandimpact.org. It is an educational platform for all the things related to what you need to write, publish, or market your book. And it's a membership situation. There's group coaching, there's office hours, there's marketing experts who come in and teach us things. And so we're excited. You know, we launched it a couple of months ago. It's still kind of in the early phases. And I'm excited to possibly see folks there.
I love it. I'm so excited for that and for you. I think it's a tremendous resource, and I can't wait to hear how it goes over these first few months after its launch.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what am I promoting this month? That is a terrific question. I think what I will say is that for the month of April, which is my birthday month, I am doing a book giveaway, but not just willy-nilly. I'm really wanting to send copies of my book to people who are in specific parts of the path and could use a little jumpstart, a little momentum. And so based on your answer to a particular question that I'm posing in my email, you have a chance to either win a copy of Dear Universe, I Get It Now, my memoir, or a copy of Do Not Write a Book until you read this one. So here's the only thing that you really need to do. You have to go to the rightplacerighttime.com, which is scrolling across the bottom there, sign up for the emails. That's where the details for the giveaway are happening. And then once you see the email that comes around about the book giveaway, you have a chance to enter by answering one simple question about where you are in the book writing journey, and your name automatically goes in to the possibility of winning a book. Running it all month. And I guess you have to respond by the 20th, and then I'm making some decisions so I can get books out to people before May. So that's what's happening over inside the email inbox. Otherwise, always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn.
Amazing. It feels very Aries of you to be celebrating the entire month for your birthday. Seems very on point.
I
love it.
Fire.
Yeah, just a little bit. I love it. Just a little fire. I have an Aries moon, which is why I think I get along with Aries so well, because Cancers and Aries don't usually, because it's like water and fire. I feel like it's not usually like a harmonious match. And most of the people closest to me are Aries. So I always find that interesting. So it matches.
That's interesting. All right.
Which is why I know that like celebrating the entire month for your birthday is like a thing.
Why not?
And why not have other people benefit from it by winning a copy of your book?
I mean, like in a lot of ways, like I'm giving you a gift.
You're like, I am the gift.
The gift that keeps on giving. All right, folks. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you next month.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.